Welcome to Practice Blueprint, an interview series where we aim to map success in law firm growth and management. Today, we're talking to Chris Nicolaysen. Chris is the owner and managing attorney at Springs Law Group, a Colorado personal injury law firm. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Me too. I guess I'll start with our relationship. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you, learning about your law firm operation for the past year. In that time, you've really stood out as an attorney in a law practice. It's very business minded in your approach to law firm operations and management, which is pretty unique. I've got exposure to law firms and practices of all sorts, all types over the last few years, and you're definitely one of the most business oriented operations. You and your team have done a little ego boost here. You and your team have done a great job of building a well-oiled machine where you got data tracking, you've got client engagement, overall client satisfaction, all at the forefront of the operation. You've kind of gone above and beyond most operations by building out mechanisms to track everything from marketing attribution to client journey, finances, so on and so forth. At first, I was a little confused when I got a peek behind the curtain. How are they doing this?
Right.
And then I've gotten to know you and your background, which shed some light on how you've gotten here. So if you'd like to share a little bit about your background with us before becoming an attorney, as an attorney.
Yeah. So I don't have the typical attorney path of like undergrad, graduating undergrad at 22 and then right on to law school right after. Mine was definitely a much longer path. I think the thing I struggled with the most whenever I was younger was, what do I want to be whenever I grow up? And so whenever you fill out your application for the bar exam, you have to fill out all of your previous jobs or your employment. My previous job pages were over 5 pages. And so, it was just a plethora of other jobs that I've worked, but primarily I had worked in retail and restaurants. My family, we lived in Vegas for about 10 years. So opened up the Banana Republic at the Venetian and managed, as an assistant manager there, worked as a waiter at the All-Star Cafe down there, at the Olive Garden, other things like that. But those things gave me, from a business standpoint, certain customer service skills that I think everybody should have. I'm a big believer these days that most everyone should work in restaurant or retail at some point, just because you learn how to talk to people, how to sell, what it's like to give somebody ownership of a product, within that time. And then I kept thinking about, what should I do with my life as I saw my friends kind of leveling up, and ultimately went into teaching and taught elementary school for a period of time. I was a 4th grade teacher for a period. And then ultimately that ended up going to the wayside, which kind of pushed me into law school. I was about 34, 35 whenever that happened. And, at that point, it was kind of a crisis moment where I thought, well, what would any 34, 35-year-old do, where he's got 2 kids, kind of close to junior high age. And of course, at that point, it was a time is of the essence piece where I couldn't really go back and get, from a time standpoint, go and get, my other requirements, going to like med school or something like that. So with law school, it was a 3-year program. You could have a bachelor's. And so I have an undergrad in communications. And so it worked that way. And that's kind of how I went there. Then I've got a whole nother story just on failing my way through law school, one failure at a time. And it was never an easy journey at all. But yeah, that's kind of how I did it in that sense. And then so I take these days both the customer service aspect and the teaching aspect are 2 big things that are really important to me.
Okay. And how's that experience in business and being a teacher in retail space shape the way that you've approached growing your law firm?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because I think that one thing I talk to a lot of people about is that I don't think law firm clients generally know what a good customer service experience is like for them. And I think it's one of those things where, like when you go into a restaurant, what good service is like for you. We each have our own quirks of what we want, of what a good experience looks like. And it's one of those things where it's like, for me, I want my drinks refilled on time without having to ask. I want my check timely. I don't want to have to wait for it too long, but I also don't want it too early where I feel like I'm being pushed out. Right. And so, but with law firms, I think it's different. Most people don't have those experiences, and it's our job as a firm here. And one thing we try to instill with the team is to over deliver from a customer service standpoint, because people don't know what it's like. So we have to wow them from the jump, which is both, from calling them back timely and giving them good customer service in that way, giving them a tangible printable product that they can have if they need it as an information guide, but also then teaching them what the process looks like, which is where those two things can go hand in hand. Giving them the ability to these days on how they want to be communicated with, I think, is really important too. So if they want to be communicated via text, email, or phone call, come in person, whichever way works best for each individual client, I think it's important. So it's important for us to listen to them and try to find out, what's the best way to communicate. And also then too, one of the other big things is this idea of what's the expectation. And so as a teacher, we always had to give our students, here's the expectation or the rubric that I'm looking for at the end. And then, with our retail clients, it's like, well, what's your expectation of what do you want? When you walk out of here, what kind of apparel, what outfit do you want to have? Well, same thing from our clients. We need to find out what is your ultimate expectation here. And if you're like, looking for something where you're looking for $1 million, but there's only $10,000 available, well, we've got to have an expectation talk here, So same thing, if I walk into the Gap, but I'm looking to buy a tux, well, we need to have an expectation talk of this may not be the right place for you.
Sure, sure. And it's interesting. You talk about, setting expectations and kind of automating and simplifying the process for your clients. But what value does that add to your firm? Because obviously the clients get something out of it, but I'm sure your firm gets some unique values out of making that simplified process and that eased process for your clients.
Yeah. I think for us, at least, obviously working in a law firm itself can be pretty stressful, right? And so for our team members, what we want to do is we want to try to make things as boring as possible, but as simple, like you said, as simplified as possible too. But for them then too, it lets them actually, instead of focusing on putting out small fires here and there, because we have those processes in place, they can actually dive deeper into their specific area that they're working on. So if it's in a pre-litigation area for the paralegal or what have you, if it's reviewing medical records or whatever it may be, they can now dive deeper instead of putting out a million little fires on a wide standpoint and things like that. So it really helps them out quite a bit that way too.
Okay. Very interesting. So let me ask, when you step away or step into the law space from a background in retail, there's obviously a blueprint for, setting up and establishing a successful business in the retail space, in the restaurant space, in the service industry space. Are there any gaps that exist when trying to set up and manage a law firm where traditional business operations fall short of building up the law practice?
The one area I'd probably say over anything else would probably, whenever I think about it, it's like how the combination of where the rules of ethics for lawyers, come into play, versus where in regular business you don't have that. Obviously you've got to be ethical, but here we truly have these rules that could fully disbar us or suspend us if we don't watch our P's and Q's. So I think it's important for us to kind of always make sure that we're within those guidelines. That whenever we're looking at a negative Google review, for example, how we respond if I'm in retail could be very different than how I respond as an attorney and as somebody that owns a law firm. So there's ways that we still have to like watch ourselves and check ourselves that are within the guidelines of professional ethics that we don't necessarily have just out in the kind of other business world out there.
Sure, and I think that's a great way that you guys have built up some success, and like especially let's hone in on the Google reviews.
Sure.
You guys approach it in a way where you're not just crafting like very generic responses to your reviews. They're well thought out. You make sure that there's no private information being shared about cases. So I think that that's one thing that has stood out amongst a number of other things in your business operation to me is like you really take the time to make sure things are done right and you're
Right.
with the right folks to get that done. So, okay. Let me ask next about some of the challenges you faced as this dual role. You're an attorney and you're also managing and building a business. I think our target audience, a lot of them will be folks that are kind of in that position now or entering that position. So, what are some big hiccups that you faced, key challenges, and then, if you could shed some light on how you approached those and got to a resolution?
Yeah, I think so I think in the beginning it was really the challenges were is how do you do both very well, right? And there's this idea where once I heard Colin Cowherd talk about you can be great at one thing. So I use Michael Jordan as the example. Great at one thing, but then you're good at this. So he talked about Jordan in relation to basketball, the greatest ever. If you're a LeBron fan, sorry, but it's still Jordan.
Chicago,
And then,
so
yeah, and then I'm actually an old school Pistons fan, but still I can respect him at this age. But then in his relationships and things like that, he's good. He's not great at those, so he wasn't able to do both. So I think now as a lawyer, especially if you're a practicing attorney, which I was in the beginning, and an owner, so which is a different hat, a CEO hat, you have to kind of start figuring out which one of those two pieces actually you want to kind of shift towards. And then as you do that, what you then have to start doing is transitioning and finding somebody that has a skill set that can help you out in that other area. And so for me at first, that was kind of the hardest thing, is kind of balancing two of those things out. And how do I do both well? And then ultimately I had to choose and to shift and pivot into just one of those roles. And it can be a real identity crisis too for some people, because if you choose just solely to take the legal role, but then you get somebody on as a CEO, well, I'm giving over a lot of power for something that's actually in my name. So that can be hard to the ego. Alternatively, if you give up the legal role and then take on the CEO role, well, I went to law school to do this thing, which was be a lawyer. What am I doing here? So I've seen some people do it successfully, handling both, but for me, that just wasn't my path. And it's one too to where I think that would be kind of how I would talk to people about doing this, is which of the two things excite you and bring you the most joy? Where is your best space used, for your time standpoint? And then now can we kind of find somebody else, even fractionally, to come in and handle some of the other stuff depending upon what it is?
And then, in your opinion, like if there's an attorney with no background in business, because they don't teach business in law school,
Yeah.
they tell you
No.
how to run a business.
Yep.
And they're thinking about starting a new law practice, or they're moving into this management position.
Yep.
Do you recommend they consider bringing in somebody with a business background to help manage if they don't have that experience, or do you think it's something you could learn on the fly?
So it's interesting you ask that, because I was just at a conference over the weekend where it was the Summit of Greatness conference, and Cody Sanchez spoke, and she said, the best way to learn about business is to be in business. And it's true, because it's kind of, if you ask lawyers, the best way to become a lawyer is to actually get out and lawyer. So, if you're going to go to a trial, go do a trial, screw up, make mistakes. Same thing as a business owner. The best way to do it, potentially, is to actually get in it, try it, make mistakes, fire that first person, create that first system, you know what I mean? And things like that. Now, I do think, though, that you need mentors along the way. You need people that are at this level that's right above you that can help push you and help you grow. I've never been one that's envious of those people. I'm always like, well, hey, if these guys can do it, then why can't I? Because they've got the skill set and they can push you forward and help you out in that sense. I do think probably down the road, it may be a good idea for a CEO. I don't know if I would do it immediately at the jump, for me at least, because I want to kind of have a baseline and a level of understanding so that when that person comes on, there can be a conversation or we can speak the same language.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're stepping away from the position and you're just handing over the responsibility to someone else without understanding what they're doing.
Right.
I think it's been a great way. Like, you understand the marketing piece of your business really well. I think your team does as a whole too. It's really helpful when you're working with someone who understands that marketing piece. So there's no disconnect in the language, and KPIs and the goal setting, all of that. So that makes a lot of sense on why you'd want at least some of that experience first.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you bring up networking and attending a conference. You do a lot of networking. You do a lot of conference events, both I think within the legal space and then outside of the industry, general business space. Yep. What value do these events bring to you, both as a lawyer and a managing partner?
Yeah, so on the legal side, I mean, I go to a bunch of different trial conferences and things like that, and then I've also made connections with other attorneys throughout the country. Those are helpful in the sense too, like when you're stuck on a case or what have you, that you're not on an island and kind of off in crazy land making decisions that you might think is right. It helps you crowdsource and run ideas by others. And the nice thing is too, at least here in the personal injury realm, is people are so willing to share. Trial attorneys throughout the country are so open to just share resources and things that they've done, mistakes that they've made because they don't want you going through it as well, PowerPoints and what have you. So it's been a real benefit there. Alternatively, on the business side, I will tell you, so we opened in February of 2017. One of the first things we did in September of 2017 is we went to a conference called the Mastermind Experience and it's John Fisher who runs that. And that was one of the greatest things I've done to help us out. It really helped us set a foundation for what's possible and learn from other law firm owners who have struggles, who are, definitely at a level that we weren't at that time, and really pushing themselves. And a lot of those people still today are friends of mine. And so really, really good resources.
Okay. If you had to choose one space, if tomorrow someone told you can only go to legal conferences or business conferences, as a managing partner, what's more valuable to you? Which one is?
As a managing partner, I would say the business conferences. I think there's a space out there that is, and then I would have my team do the legal conferences.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I'm a brand new attorney. I'm starting Jordan Terry Law next week.
Yep.
I come to you and I say, hey, I only have funds to attend one conference this year. We're on a tight budget.
Yep.
One conference you tell me to go to.
If you are in the personal injury space, the one that I would recommend, and you want to do trial work or any sort of depositions, things like that, the one that I would tell you to go to would be Trial Lawyers University, or TLU. Dan Ambrose runs it. The thing that Dan does very, very well is he gets high-level attorneys together, and it's a conference where they get up and we'll go over actual cases, but also teach you the skills that they've done in the past from all over the country. And Dan does a really good job of getting some people together that, again, are really willing to share. Like, they'll give you their PowerPoints, they'll give you everything you can, but to sit in rooms with people who have gotten excess verdicts, that have been out practicing for multiple years, I think it can be really, really helpful to set yourself up for success and give you a really strong foundation in that sense as a new attorney.
Okay. On the flip side of engagement and networking, you and the team have really tried to engage with and be involved with the community, philanthropic events, charities. Can you shed some light on that, why you decided to get involved with the local community, and what are your exact efforts and charitable actions?
Yeah, so we started out naming it instead of naming it from each partner at the time. We named it Springs Law Group for a reason, and that was to be part of the community. It also makes it easier if you've ever watched Suits, where you're not running through like Pearson Specter lit and then somebody leaves and then it becomes something else. I think it makes life a little bit easier as well. But we really wanted to be part of the community. So from the jump, we were doing things like giving bikes away, doing a Bikes for Kids giveaway, doing a Deserving Teacher Award, things like that. Each year we do a scholarship. And generally with the kids that apply, they've got to give us their transcript, a resume, and then also write a paper on distracted driving. And then myself, I work with Joel Feldman, and we give talks throughout the country. Generally, mine are locally in Colorado for enddd.org, and then that's his nonprofit, and so which is to end distracted driving. And we do those in schools because we really believe that by teaching kids about distracted driving, they can actually be the true change and help influence change as they then go and get their licenses and things like that. Last year, we gave away over 500 backpacks and with supplies and things like that, and had a big event. So we're constantly looking at different ways. We support different charities in town and things like that, and then are always talking to the leadership team here about what's the next thing that we can do as we continue. So there's never just one thing, but it's always a constant barrage of things and trying to figure out what's the next best thing.
Yeah, that's great. And what's the response been from the community?
It's been really good, and helpful. I mean, because here's the thing, right, is like, if you think about an injury lawyer, what are we generally viewed as, right? You're viewed as like money grubbing, bottom feeders, things like that, like ambulance chasers and what have you. And so the goal is to be like, no, like we are here to actually truly help, but help in more ways than just one, getting you money or fighting for you or, what have you. And it's also just, we're here to help the community as a whole. And because, I'm a big believer that we can be humans helping other humans. And truly at the end of the day, that's what we are. I've got a group of team members here that are much more impactful than just I am individually day to day. And they're humans who come out and help other humans. I mean, last week, whenever I was at the conference out in California, I mean, we had a whole team. We were sponsoring a table at the Wing Fest that we had out here. And, we had 4 or 5 of our team members there giving out swag and doing things like that. So the whole thing can still keep working, and it doesn't happen because I'm the one who has to do it all.
Okay. So you've had some experience under your belt now running a law firm, after previously having a lot of experience in the business world. From the inception of Springs Law Group to now, is there any viewpoints, strategies, or opinions that you initially held pretty strong that have completely flip-flopped to this point, that maybe other new attorneys or new practices might be dealing with now?
Yeah, I think, so I guess viewpoints that I've had in the past, at times it feels like whenever things are just going really well, like, you get a big case or, things are just kind of pushing, clients are calling in or what have you and hiring. I think, you think that that's just going to last forever. And you're like on easy street right now. We're just coasting. That's the time actually the thing I've learned is you've got to keep your pedal to the gas right then. You got to keep pushing. You can't let it off because just like, there's a great, video out there. It's a round table of these actors and Tom Hanks is one of them. And he's like, is that line of like, you think things are going well, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
Things aren't going well, this too shall pass. And I mean, he's absolutely right. And that's just it, is the hard times come and go. And so, I was telling somebody a while back from a legal side, I've had cases that I've won. I've had cases where I've been in the middle of a closing argument and the judge has stopped me and says, Mr. Nicolaysen, I completely disagree with your viewpoint there. I'm like, okay, judge, I guess you can. I've had cases where I've actually lost to pro se parties who were not represented by lawyers. And so talk about humbling as all get out. You're like, what the heck just happened there?
Sure.
Alternatively, I've also on the business side, I've had employees that stay and love it. I've had employees that leave and don't like me at all. And you know what I mean? So you get the ebbs and flows. We've had clients who will leave us and don't like the service we provide. And so it's just a gambit of you can't please everyone all the time. Our job is not to make everyone happy. It's to make the people that choose to come and stay and be part of it, if it's a client or if it's a team member, kind of satisfied, but that's based on the work that they do. And so from a legal standpoint, a case generally is only as good as the client can help make it. And that's obviously with your guidance, but in that sense. And then alternatively with your team members, it's as good as they want to be vested into it and how much output they want to give. Yeah. And so those are the things that I've learned about in that sense. And another thing too, that I was talking to a friend of mine about the other day is if you choose to go on this journey where you're both an attorney and an owner, the reality is that it can get very lonely at the top. And the one thing I would stress, and that was stressed at the conference, I've had friends of mine where we've talked about it, is you need a community. No matter what, you need a community of like-minded people that can relate to the stressors that you're going through. Because it's so easy sometimes to say, I'm all alone in this. No one out there understands what I'm going through. The reality is there are plenty of people out there that actually do understand, but you've got to find the right groups and communities of support that can really help you with that. And there's plenty out there.
I'm sure those groups and communities that offer the answers that you think are unanswerable too.
Correct. Exactly. Absolutely. Because if you think you're going through it and you're the only one that's ever had it happen, there's no way. There's plenty of other people that have had pretty similar stuff happen.
So more generally, if you could share one piece of advice with a new lawyer or an attorney, a group of attorneys starting a new firm, what would that be?
So the one piece of advice over anything, like from a general standpoint, would be to take action. I think too many people are stuck, especially attorneys are stuck in the idea of perfect. And I think you've got to take action. So you have the idea, just execute, because the ability to move and move quickly quickly, take action. And then what you want from that action is you want to be able to step back and get data. I need information now from the action that I took. Did this thing work? And if it did, great. Now I can repeat it. If it didn't work, what data now do I have? Why didn't it work? Let's now analyze it. It doesn't mean you failed, but take action. Too many people, what I've seen in conferences or other things that fail to actually grow, both from a legal standpoint or from a business standpoint, they keep talking about the same thing months down the road. It's the what if I do this, and when I do this, but this isn't done yet. It's like the person, and I'm sure you see it too, is the person that's going to start shooting YouTube videos. Well, they don't just shoot it yet, right?
Yeah.
Because why? Because I need to get the perfect camera, and then I need to get the right lighting, and then I need the right mic, and then I've got to get a teleprompter that can give me the script and do all these things. Well, the reality is, what do we need? You need that. That is it. I just need a phone. You can shoot right then and post it up, and you're good, because something is better than nothing. And so by taking action, you get some information and some feedback. And by getting those reps in over and over again, by shooting a video or what have you, you end up getting better and better each time you do it. So I'd say take action over anything else.
I think you stole my speech to 90% of my clients there.
There you go.
It's interesting. So you talk about data and like how you make data informed decisions. I think it's important to explain what data you're talking about. Like, what are the important data pieces that you guys use to analyze success? Because law firms don't look at data really at all.
Right. Yeah. So for us, it's we start with revenue. So you want to look at your revenue that's brought into your actual operating account. And then we track new cases that signed up. We track cases closed. And then because the reason we track cases closed is because I also need an average case value, which I think average case value is super important, because then it also helps you inform, in order to reach this next goal, I now know how many new clients I need to bring in to help me get to that goal based on the average case, the average revenue. We also track, for us on the PI side, I track demand sent. We track production. We do everything by pod. So we break our cases out into groups. And so we track the production of each of those groups. And then as well, we track our Google reviews too. We also track our marketing spend. So total marketing spend to cases acquired, which will give us an average case cost to actually acquire a case. And so those would be some of the base ones that really push us forward in that regard.
Okay. So as we wrap up, let me ask, what's the plan for Springs Law? What can we expect of Springs Law Group here in the next few years?
Yeah, so it's dedicated intentional growth, and it's not, as much as I love the idea of like a 10x, is better than 2x, or the Cardone's 10x or what have you. To me, it's being really strategic and smart on what the growth looks like. And so it's, anywhere between a 10 to 15% growth each year. As then that happens, and we keep on, kind of looking to find ways to grow and serve the people in the Colorado Springs community. It's also then finding ways to grow out of the Springs and find other spots within the state of Colorado to help serve, and help them out along the way. And then along with that too, it's, finding ways to then have the team keep growing, but also stay cohesive. Next month, we're moving to a 4-day work week. And so it's, which is generally not a typical thing you hear in most law firms, but we're going to experiment and we're going to try it out. And so as we do that, to keep the team open to new ideas, and for us, what do we want from that experiment? I want data and feedback from them. And if it works, great, we're going to keep doing it. If it doesn't, then we'll pivot and we'll try something else again. And so it's that constant thing there. But for us too, one of the things too that we'll keep doing, as we keep growing, is we do a quarterly team, function, which is, something, we're doing Painting with a Twist coming up. We've done like the indoor skydiving and other things like that. So I think it's really important to have connection time with your team. And one of the things, honestly, Jordan, I've had, poor bosses in the past. I don't think I'm the perfect boss, but there's ways that I can get better, and I'll keep trying to do that as much as I can, but also let the team tell me whenever I'm messing up as much as possible too.
Sure. All right. Well, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the Practice Blueprint.